And then after that, get to know the community of Brandon. That's the topic today with Florida Matters Live and Local.
WUSF presents an evening with David Sedaris, live at the Strass Center, featuring all news stories, audience Q&A, and book signing, October 30th. Tickets and information at davidsedarisontour.com.
Today on Florida Matters Live and Local, a topic close to the hearts of all parents in Hillsborough County. The issue is speeding at school crossings. Cops are getting even more serious about enforcement. Speed cameras are going to be rolling for the whole school day, not just in the morning and afternoon when school lets out. Will that make conditions safer? Call into 813-755-6562. I'm Matthew Petty. Let's talk about how safe it is for kids walking to school. And Brandon. You've driven through it, maybe you live there, but do you really know it? What do you love about the place? What makes you crazy about Brandon? Let us know. And can you afford to buy a house in Tampa Bay? We'll also talk about how one of the most surreal of surrealist painters found a place here. We'll talk about the Salvador Dali Museum. All this and more on Florida Matters Live and Local. First, the news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Nora Rahm. President Trump is in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, for a gathering of world leaders on the future of Gaza. This follows his visit to Israel and today's release of the 20 remaining Israelis who had been held hostage by Hamas for more than 2 years. The remains of 2 deceased hostages were also released. While in Israel, the president spoke to the Israeli parliament. NPR's Daniel Estrin reports.
In his speech, President Trump called it an exciting time for Israel and across the Middle East, and even called for Israel-Iran peace.
Generations from now, this will be remembered as the moment that everything began to change, and change very much for the better.
2 members of a left-wing Arab-majority political party held up signs saying "Recognize Palestine." Israel's parliament speaker ordered them to be ejected from the hall. Guards forced them out, lawmakers chanted Trump's name, and Trump said,
"That was very efficient."
Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
President Trump says he's thinking about sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. As NPR's Luke Garrett reports, Trump says he spoke to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky about the missiles during a phone call yesterday.
While flying to the Middle East on Air Force One, Trump said he talked to Zelensky about weapons and that he hopes to send more through NATO. But Trump says he hasn't made a decision on whether to send American long-range cruise missiles.
They'd like to have Tomahawks. That's a step up. They'd like to have Tomahawks. We talked about that.
Sending Tomahawks would be an escalation, Trump says, and he may bring it up with Russian President Vladimir Putin himself.
I might say, look, if this war's not going to get settled, I'm going to send them Tomahawks. I may say that. The Tomahawk is an incredible weapon. Very offensive weapon.
Trump then praised the Ukrainians for being good fighters. Earlier Sunday, Zelensky said he had a, quote, very productive call with Trump, the second in 2 days. Luke Garrett, NPR News, the White House.
It's day 13 of the government shutdown, and there's no movement in sight to end the stalemate. Democrats are insisting that any bill to reopen the government must include an extension of health care subsidies, scheduled to expire this year. The House isn't in session this week. Speaker Mike Johnson says he'll bring members back to Washington when the government reopens.
Our members are doing very productive work. We're in constant communication with them, and we are ready to come back and continue the work in our committees and everything on the House floor. We will return to legislative session as soon as the Democrats come to their senses and open the government.
Republicans want a short-term bill that continues government spending at current levels. The Nobel Prize in Economics was awarded today. It will be shared by Joel Mokor of Northwestern University, Peter Howard of Brown University, and Philippe Agnion of the College of France and the London School of Economics. They're being honored for their research in how technology can drive sustained economic growth. This is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher is committed to helping clients stay on track to reach their financial goals and enjoy a comfortable retirement. FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
This is WUSF 89.7 News. I'm Jessica Mazzaros. Florida is expected to see an exploding need for more nurses in the coming decade. But as WUSF's Gabriel Velasquez Neira reports, expanding a college's nursing program isn't as simple as just accepting more students.
The Florida Hospitals Association expects the state will need as many as 60,000 additional nurses by 2035. So, the University of South Florida St. Petersburg campus is launching a new 4-year nursing program for incoming freshmen, but there are limited seats. Usha Menon is the dean of the USF College of Nursing.
The challenge we have in nursing is that we also have a nurse faculty shortage. Per our accreditation guidelines, we have to have a certain ratio of faculty to students in the clinical setting. So if I bring in an extra student, I have to have almost a half-time person hired.
About 70 of the 85 students accepted into the program will make it into higher level courses after 2 years. Gabriel Velasquez Neira, WUSF 89.7 News.
The Tampa City Council is dissolving its Racial Reconciliation Committee. The group was formed last year to give marginalized groups a voice in the city's public matters, but concerns over state and federal restrictions on DEI efforts led to the decision. Councilmember Bill Carlson says the resolution allows the committee to keep meeting free of Florida's Sunshine Law.
By not making it a city committee, we're releasing it from Sunshine. The committee can continue to meet on their own. They can't even talk to each other right now unless we do this.
The committee will still be able to submit proposals and recommendations to the City Council, but Committee Vice Chair Christopher J. Harris tells WUSF it's unclear if they plan to continue meeting independently.
There may be some individuals that are committed to doing some work to impact the community or to advance some of the agendas within the community, but to my knowledge, there's no formal commitment or formal activities that have been organized yet.
Harris adds he hopes all community members band together to address the issues the committee did. I'm Jessica Mazzaros with WUSF 89.7 News.
Want to catch up on Tampa Bay area news and culture? I'm Sky LeBron, and I got you every weekday morning with the Bay Blend podcast from WUSF. It's quick, fun, and you'll discover something new every day. It's the Bay Blend, wherever you get your podcasts or at WUSF.org.
Learn how sea level rise will shape the future of biodiversity in Florida, one of America's richest ecological treasures. November 13th at USF Sarasota Manatee Selby Auditorium. Tickets at theclimateadaptationcenter.org.
You're listening to Florida Matters live and local, broadcasting from the Doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel studios at WSF in Tampa. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, it may sound like race cars whizzing by when you're a watchful parent worried about your kids walking to school. But if you drove past a school crosswalk on your way to work this morning, you probably noticed the flashing lights, the sign saying school zone, and the posted warnings to slow down. Hillsborough County has school speed zone cameras too to discourage speeders. Is it going to make things safer for kids? And are you worried about getting a ticket if you're a driver? Now those cameras will be rolling for the whole school day, not just at drop-off and pick-up times. Let's talk, 813-755-6562. You can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WSF.org. What kind of behaviour from drivers are you seeing around school zones when you're dropping off your kids or picking them up? Or at other times of day. For more, we're joined by Master Sergeant Kara Baxter with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Thank you so much for stopping by. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt, for having me.
So, how bad is the speeding problem? And is this something you're seeing a lot of around the school zones at morning time and in the afternoon?
So when the program started approximately last school year, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office and Board of County Commissioners partnered together to start Operation Safe Passage. Mm-hmm. Since then, we've had more and more cameras come into the schools, and we are seeing when the program went live again this school year, which was effective September 22nd, we saw approximately since then about 8,700 notices of violation have been given out.
Wow.
So it's pretty startling for how early in the school year that we are. Red Speed, who operates the program or runs the program, they have reported that after about the first year of implementation, they start seeing a reduction of about 90% in notice of violations being issued.
Okay, so let me just kind of walk back through that slowly. So 8,700 violations so far in the school year, and what are we, like 2-3 months into it?
August 12th, I believe, is when it started, but the program itself went live this year, September 22nd.
Okay.
So in not even a month's time. Yes.
Did that surprise you, sort of seeing that sort of rate of people getting pinged for speeding?
Actually, it kind of did. But we're glad that it's getting out now, and drivers are becoming more aware and more conscious of their speeds while in the school zones.
We're talking with Master Sergeant Kara Baxter with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, talking about speeding around school zones. Have you seen speeders around your kid's school? Now's your chance to have a chat with Master Sergeant Baxter from the County Sheriff's Office. You can call us at 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also send us an email. We're at FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Now, just some details about when you would get one of these citations, right? You've got to be going 20 miles per hour over the limit, over the posted limit.
So during the school zone times where the beacons are flashing, the yellow beacon lights are flashing, you can travel up to 10 miles an hour. So it's a violation is given after anything above 10 miles an hour. During the times when those beacons aren't flashing, we still find it's really important to still acknowledge that you're in a school zone. And so those speeds are enforced. The regular posted speed limit is enforced 10 miles an hour again during those times.
Okay. And when was the decision made to say we're going to have these cameras rolling for the entire school day? Actually, I should sort of clarify the timing too, right? Because they start going before school actually starts, and then after school lets out by a little bit, right?
That's correct. So initially, when it rolled out, as with any program, you kind of start feeling out, some of the challenges. And initially, we only ran it during the beacon times. Well, it's not really feasible when you have signs that have 7, 8 different times because there's 3 different schools in that zone, and we recognize that that's difficult for the citizens. It's difficult for us. So we went to all day. And the reason why is, 30 minutes before the earliest school starts, there's breakfast program. We are encouraging children to go eat breakfast at school, have that good first meal of the day, but we're not protecting them. So therefore we, enforce those speeds during that earlier time from earlier in the day so we can protect those kids.
And I mean, are you seeing people just zip through these crosswalks even when there's a crossing guard? Because I feel like some drivers aren't even really fully aware of what the rules are around crosswalks. Like, you're supposed to stop for a pedestrian, right? But not everybody seems to recognize that.
I'm sure the crossing guards have seen quite a bit. So we're just hoping that we start getting the message out more, just to be more cognizant of the speeds when you're traveling around those school zones.
Is it a standard speed when the beacons are going too? Like, you drop it by a certain amount, or does every school zone have the same speed for drivers?
No, most school zones are 20 miles an hour, but it depends. In some of the smaller neighborhoods, they're 15. So I'd always encourage everyone, look at your signs. There's plenty of signage available. Beacons are, a real obvious sign that you need to slow down. And like we said, there is that, 10 mile an hour or over 10 mile an hour buffer there in case you're unsure.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the phones. We've got Xenia on the line. Xenia, you're on the air. What are you seeing? Xenia, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right, go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am very pleased that they're trying to slow traffic at school zones, because I have seen oftentimes people just disregard all the information that's being given them. Even when there are patrols there, they just speed through the area. But last spring, I was driving on Bears Avenue in front of Buchanan Middle School, and I'm a former teacher, and I'm also a regular volunteer in public schools, and I knew school was out. It was the last day of school. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There wasn't a car in the parking lot, and I thought, golly, this doesn't, I'm fine. This is not an issue. And sure enough, I got a warning in the mail, and I contacted them and said, school was not in session. Why am I getting this warning? And they said, well, it's just automatic. There's nothing you can do about it. I said, I would like to have this removed from my record so that my insurance company doesn't think that I've done something wrong, because I always obey the speed sign. And they said, there's nothing we can do about it. So I would love to see in the process them implement something for when you have a challenge to this, that there would be an easy way to contact the company, which I assume is a private company, and dispute the issue. So that's my comment. But I am grateful for the speed zone.
Xenia, thanks so much for your call. I really appreciate that. All right, so Yeah, I mean, what is the process like? That they have to go via the company? What happens?
Yes, Xenia, I really appreciate your phone call. I'd love to clear up there's a lot of those misconceptions around. So when the violations are issued, there's no points on your license, your insurance isn't notified, it's a fine. So you have 3 options whenever you get these notices of violation in the mail. You can pay the fine. You can complete an affidavit transferring of liability to another driver that maybe was operating your vehicle at the time. Also, you can request a contestation hearing. So then they go before hearing officers, and you can explain your situation or explain why you think that you were improperly given a violation, and it can be heard. So there are some avenues to explore if you receive one.
Are you reaching out to Hillsborough County Sheriff? Like, who do you actually contact though if you get one of these violations? Is it the county? Is it the sheriff's office?
You can request it through RedSpeed.
Okay. So, what's your kind of sense of how this program is working? Are you expecting it to sort of tail off after a bit? Like, it does sound, and just sort of going back to that 8,000 plus citations, that does seem like an awful lot for the first kind of try out of this program.
This is really our first time we've implemented this, so we're still trying to assess what the violations look like and how they're going to go. We're not even a month into the program, so for this school year, so we really don't know what to expect. We assume, because RedSpeed's telling us that in other places, other jurisdictions where they've implemented this program, that they're seeing this 90% reduction. So I think just, at first it's just bringing awareness, and ultimately it's about keeping kids safe.
I know you mentioned it at the top of our conversation, Master Sergeant Baxter, but just remind us, what's the name of the program, or what's the kind of the thrust of it?
It's a RedSpeed camera enforcement program. So RedSpeed is the vendor that they contract and put them out. We're in, I believe it's 28 schools. We have a couple that are down right now, but that's our first wave. We anticipate growing as the program continues. That's where we're at right now. You can find all 28 schools that are included in our on our public website.
Yeah. I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but where does the fine money go to? Does that go back to the county?
It's state statute regulates where everything goes to. So I know the misconception is it's lining sheriff's office pockets, it's a money grab, like we hear that frequently. But there is very specific guidelines stating where everything goes. So it's not the money grab per se. It really is, it's less about the money, it's more about bringing awareness to student safety.
We're talking about speeding around school zones. If you're a parent in Hillsborough County, you can give us a call. We're at 813-755-6562. Just got a few moments that are here to wrap up. Master Sergeant Baxter, I mean, what's the biggest thing that bugs you about the way people drive around schools? What have you seen?
I've seen close calls with kids. We've seen, the driveways that are coming out from, small businesses or into a school zone, and they're navigating traffic that's stopped, and then they're not seeing kids walking across the sidewalk. So that's some of the stuff we're seeing. We have some, alarming speeds. I think we've gotten some 50s and a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. So that's kind of alarming, yes.
Yeah. All right. We might check in with you again as this program kind of continues and see how it's going. We've been speaking with Master Sergeant Kara Baxter with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, later this hour, Brandon, hometown or state of mind. You'll meet 2 Brandon natives who will tell us all about what makes this place special, and whether you live there or you drive through it, we want to hear your stories about Brandon. What do you love about the place? What do you find maddening? You can email us, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org, and join in the conversation in a few minutes. But first, is there any affordable housing in Tampa Bay? WUSF's Gabriella Paul has been looking into why housing is so expensive and what's out there for renters and people looking to buy. A conversation coming up in a moment on Florida Matters, live and local. Stay tuned.
I'm Peter O'Dowd. Yeva Yusanite just won a MacArthur Genius Grant for her research on international borders and how illegal activities move across them.
There is a connection between our gun industry and our gun laws and violence. in Mexico and in Central America.
She'll talk about her work and her plans next time on Here and Now.
Beginning at 1 on WUSF.
Support for WUSF comes from listeners like you and from Seitenbacher, with a new web shop, healthy muesli, cold-pressed oils, and vegetable broth mix delivered to your door from right here in Tampa Bay. Details at Seitenbacher.com, Seitenbacher, Seitenbacher. If you want more jazz, dive into WUSFjazz.org. Stream concerts, find upcoming shows, and lose yourself in curated playlists. All presented by Side Door at the Palladium, Tampa Bay's home of jazz for 20 years.
Welcome back to Florida Matters, live and local. I'm Matthew Petty. How much are you paying for rent? Are you struggling to find a place to buy? Finding a place to live in the Tampa Bay region is pretty expensive, and one reason for that is growth. Florida is second only to Texas for net migration. Last year, the population grew by 467,000 people. More than 23 million people live in Florida now, and they all need somewhere to live. And the housing shortage is making longtime Floridians nervous.
Generational Floridian is that I hope my kids will be able to stay. I hope we don't become the next California.
Well, that's Jacob Kramer, managing partner at Tampa law firm Barbas Kramer, talking at a recent affordable housing conference. So, is there affordable housing to be found in the Tampa Bay region? Who's trying to solve the problem of affordable housing and how? Let us know how you're getting by as well. 813-755-6562 is the number. That's 813-755-6562. You can also drop us a line. We're at FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. WUSF's Gabriella Paul reports on paycheck-to-paycheck issues, including housing. She joins us now. Gabriella, thanks for being here. Now, Florida is short about 486,000 homes. I mean, is this just because of how fast we're growing? Are there some other reasons in the mix there?
Yes, net migration is a huge issue that's amplifying the shortage, but the shortage did exist before we saw this big influx of folks. So, you know, when we talk about affordable housing, this term gets thrown around a lot, right? And really what it means is, can you rent without paying more than 30% of your income? Mm-hmm. So when we say there's an affordable housing crisis, part of it is there's a shortage of those affordable rental units and houses that you can buy within your budget. But also it's, you know, how much of your budget is it taking up?
Yeah.
And if there's higher income folks that are trickling down and in those more quote unquote affordable units, it's an issue that just keeps on going. So I would say, you know, long story short, yes, net migration is amplifying this issue, but there's been an underproduction in the last couple of years of homes and rental units. And on top of that, with, you know, some quick supply and demand, you know, knowledge here, if there's less of a supply, affordability is going to be an issue.
Yeah, I mean, it might come as a bit of a surprise for people who drive around and just see the kind of farmland or orchards being transformed into development, that there isn't enough of it, right? But that's a fact. What does a housing shortage look like? Like, what are people having to do to make things work for them?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's interesting you brought up places like Pasco County, Polk County, those rural areas, because they're really getting pushed both from farmland being bought up from big farms and now residential areas that are kind of that urban sprawl going out there. And that's because folks are having to live farther from where they work. So if you're working in the downtown Tampa area or in that metro area, more likely the last couple of years you've thought, oh, maybe I need to go out into Pasco County, have a little bit of a longer commute. Mm-hmm. That is a very common reaction that's happening during this housing affordability crisis. Some other things, just paying more for rent. Some people are just able to eat that, you know, paying more like 50, 60% of their income toward rent, so not that 30% affordable marker.
So you don't actually even have the sort of buffer if something goes wrong. If you're paying 60% of your income on rent, that's an awful lot.
Right, yes. And that's where, you know, you hear folks say living one emergency away from dropping into poverty. That is really, you know, the group of people that I cover very exclusively. That's a very dangerous place to be. That is one medical emergency. That's, you know, one thing that can, you know, put you in a situation where now you can't pay rent and you're facing eviction potentially.
Yeah.
Some folks are just going to be lifetime renters at this point. They're thinking, you know, I'm never going to be able to buy that starter home, making different life decisions like I'm going to move in with parents or I'm going to live with my partner and be double income, no kids, you know, moving the money around to make it work because we're just not seeing wages keep up with the housing costs.
Yeah. Let's go to the phones. We've got Leela on the air. Leela, what are you thinking about this conversation?
Well, I thought that Hillsborough County approved with the planning department approved a low-income housing development at Mulrennan Road and Highway 60 in Brandon about 3 years ago, and it's been sitting with the construction started but never finished for the last 2 years. And they also approved a townhome development right around the corner from that, or right down the road from that, same time. And the land is up for sale again after going through massive amounts of approvals from the county, never getting done. And I just wonder why not modular homes, and why not take some of the land that's being sold and given away to not-for-profits and develop that land into modular homes and kits that we could build for young people that want a tiny home. You know, and also I work with the homeless, so I've been trying to get the county to see if we planted and built 140 cottages that slept 4 people per cottage, we'd actually take about 600 homeless people off the streets of Tampa instead of pushing them around Tampa without housing.
Yeah.
But I'll call you back because I know you're trying to cover this subject right now. And I want to talk about Brandon.
Okay. Well, we'll stand by. But Leela, thank you so much for weighing in. Some interesting thoughts here. I mean, it sounds like there are some developments, but it's taken a while to kind of get them off the ground. I mean, is that what you're seeing?
So I think you hit on something that is definitely part of the affordable housing conversation and the solution. This came up on that panel, that conference where we heard a soundbite. There's a lot of local zoning and land use conversations and opposition that happens, and there's reasons for that, right? Because municipalities want to have a say in how their area grows, not just that it grows. But when we're at this point now where there is, about 500,000 shortage of homes, and we're seeing the pressure is so high, especially on moderate income folks, to where they're either moving farther away or sometimes leaving the state, the question becomes, at what point is pro-development just pro-housing? Is all housing good housing? And so that is the argument that is happening at, I would say, almost every single local level right now in the state.
One solution that also popped up in that conference is granny flats.
The 3 most important things in housing affordability are smaller lot, smaller lot, smaller lot.
All right, that's Ed Pinto, co-director of the centre-right think tank AEI Housing Centre. What's a granny flat?
Okay, so they're not exclusively places where grandmas live. Granny flats, they're sometimes known as mother-in-law suites. These are defined in Florida, at least, as additional living quarters on a single-family lot that are separate from the primary residence, but they have a standalone kitchen, bathroom, sleeping area. Sometimes they're even like a garage that's been retrofitted into an area to sleep and live, but they can be passive income for, homesteaded properties. They're essentially places that can be rented out. And it's not, the silver bullet solution to affordable housing by any means, but it does represent, kind of like what our caller said, a creative solution, more variety for people of different income levels, like tiny homes, cottages, these ADUs, they're accessory dwelling units is their formal name. These are all sorts of solutions that you see a lot of pushback from at local levels in certain neighborhoods. A lot of that, not in my backyard, I like it, but not here. But there is evidence that more of this variety and smaller lots and just that diversity and ease of development would become a boost of affordable housing units just in terms of numbers.
Yeah. All right. So it sounds like these cities and counties have quite a lot to kind of get through to solve some of these big problems, which you'll be reporting on. WUSF's Gabriella Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, coming up next, Brandon is a big slice of Hillsborough County, but does it have a character all of its own? If you live in Brandon, or if you drive through it, what makes it special? How would you describe Brandon? What drives you up the wall about the place? You're about to hear from a couple of people with deep ties to Brandon. They'll tell you what they think is unique about Brandon, and we want to hear your stories too. Call and share your Brandon stories by getting in touch with us at 813-755-6562. You can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. You're listening to Florida Matters, live and local. Much more to come in a moment.
On the next Fresh Air, Mitch Albom, whose book Tuesdays with Maury became a best-selling memoir and an Emmy-winning film, discusses his new novel, Twice. The story is about a man who discovers he can relive any moment, but must accept the consequences of reliving it. Join us.
Fresh Air can now be heard weeknights, Monday through Thursday at 7 o'clock.
At WUSF, support comes from the people who listen, like you. Also, Tampa Bay Solar, designing, building, and installing renewable clean energy solar systems for residential and commercial customers across the state of Florida, with over 2,000 installations. Learn more at tampabaysolar.com. The Florida Orchestra welcomes violinist Benjamin Beilman for Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto, conducted by Michael Francis, at the Mahaffey Theater and Ruth Eckerd Hall, with a Sunday matinee, October 18th and 19th. Details at floridaorchestra.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters, live and local. I'm Matthew Petty. Have you ever been to Brandon? It's the little bedroom community down I-75, tucked to the east of Tampa. It's technically a part of the Tampa metro area, but the small town has its own history, historic landmarks, and people who've always called it home. Established in the late 1800s with a general store and a few mom-and-pop shops, today Brandon boasts over 100,000 residents, a community college, and a very popular and lively shopping mall. I'm told it has the only Lego store in the whole Tampa Bay area. Well, even if you don't live there, chances are you've driven through Brandon. What makes Brandon special? And what's behind the influx of people and businesses, especially when there's a bigger city down the highway? Do you have a favourite memory from living in Brandon? Let us know. We're at 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. We're joined by Karen McGuinness-Vaughan, Preserving Brandon. Karen, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
And also with us is Heather Stump, who is the owner of Music Showcase. Heather, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me start with you, Heather. The store opened in 1995, I think. Is that right?
It did. Yes, it did, actually. We were the old Brandon News.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the old Brandon News used to be, in that spot.
You mean like the local newspaper?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
a portable. And then they had moved out. A doctor's office had moved in, and they had moved out. And so we moved in. And so that was about 30 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have been working with the community ever since then.
And you offer music lessons. You've got a kids' theater. What else is going on there?
We do. We stay pretty busy. We have a full-line music store, so we're kind of a one-stop shop. We have a full-line music store. We work with the county schools in several counties, but especially Hillsborough County. So we have road reps that go out and service all the elementary, middle, and high schools and some of the colleges, such as USF.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also do repairs. We have several repair techs that work upstairs. We do lessons. And then we developed in 2010 a nonprofit called Florida Academy of Performing Arts.
Mm-hmm.
And they do all of the group things, such as rock band. We have multiple theater programs. We sometimes do some jazz ensembles, some string programs. And we have a homeschool program. So we stay pretty busy from 9 to 9 through the week and most of the day Saturday.
Were you there from the very get-go?
I was. Yeah, I was. This was kind of my idea on a napkin in a restaurant with my grandfather. And I said, I want to pitch something to you. What do you think? And he says, I think you're crazy. And so 30 years later, I'm still crazy, but we're still supporting the community. We believe in partnerships. We're big in the community and community involvement. So.
Did you see, could you have foreseen what it would become 30 years later?
Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
No, I would be lying. I had no idea what would happen. I knew I love to teach. I love to work with people. I felt like the area needed something that was very hands-on. We're bright and colorful. We offer variety. And it's exciting. And so I never had any idea. In fact, I started the theater program with Joy Rogers many years ago, a couple years after we opened the store. And everyone said, this is never going to work, that no one is going to do children's theater or theater. And I said, well, I love it, and I have a passion for it, and we're going to try it. And I partnered with Joy, and she was there for many, many years until she retired.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're talking about Brandon on Florida Matters Live and Local with Heather Stump. This is the owner of Music Showcase. If you live in Brandon, or maybe you drive through it, what makes the place special? How would you describe Brandon? You can give us a call, 813-755-6562. With us also is Karen McGuinness-Vaughan with Preserving Brandon. All right, so tell us all about what Preserving Brandon does.
Yeah, thanks. So if anyone needs to get in touch with me, you can reach at preservingbrandon at
gmail.com. Brandon has a very, very rich history. What a lot of people don't realize is it was settled back in the 1850s. The Armed Occupation Act of 1842, when Florida was very, very, very primitive and wild, allowed people to come and settle here as long as they were willing to build a house on 160 acres and resume residency there for about 5 years. So what happened is in 1856, John Brandon and his wife Martha, they came from Mississippi in 2 covered wagons, their horses, their oxen. It took them almost 2 years to get here.
That's old school.
Very old school. They landed actually at Fort Brooke in 1857, and then they migrated over to Seffner and stayed there for about a year, and then they moved towards the Brandon area, which ultimately in 1890, the new town of Brandon was formed and platted.
They probably didn't want to stay in a place that was named after someone else, right? They're like, a lot of land here. I want a place named after me.
Why not call it Brandon?
Yeah.
So what, in the original downtown Brandon on the corner of Moon and Victoria, that's where the train depot was, because before Highway 60, that was Highway 60 and vehicles existed. That was an old Seminole trail. So people used the train to get to and from. So that Moon and Victoria was the original downtown Brandon. So all of that area is still there. However, what has happened over the years is Brandon and all of its surrounding communities, Valrico, Dover, Seffner, those are in unincorporated Hillsborough County. So we don't have the rights like you do in, Ybor City or some of these other profound places that have retained their historical value.
Right. So there's buildings and the like you'd like to see them preserved, but it's a bit of a struggle.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background there.
Sure.
So to answer your question, like preserving Brandon, what we try to do is we work with the community. A lot of the homes that are still, the very few homes that are still left or buildings, they have rights, and if you can get them preserved under Hillsborough County, you don't have to pay taxes. You can get grant money to fix your roof, all the things. So we're trying to work with our community and the surrounding areas to preserve what little pieces of Brandon are left. And it's not just the dwellings. We have the generations of families, the Mooks, the Falkenbergs, the Waters Avenue, which are my family.
That's your people?
That's my maiden name.
Yeah.
We have the Lumsden family still around. So we have our bi-monthly meetings where people come and they share about, the history and what it was like in the 1930s in Brandon or the 1960s. Yep. So it's just it was an organic attempt to pull something together that has really sprouted into something wonderful. We're working right now with Hillsborough County to get some historical landmarks put up at certain areas. We collaborate with like the Limona Cemetery to do events there. Just a lot of the Mosley Homestead. A lot of people don't know about that, right on the corner of Highway 60 and Lakewood, right there on 10 Mile Lake, 10 miles from Fort Brooke.
Right.
Sits this beautiful home built in 1886 that no one knows about unless you know about it.
Well, they do now.
They do now, and we're working towards turning that into a library, or not a library, but a museum.
I want to get a call in here if I could. Leela, I think you're on the air. What's on your mind?
Number one, I have gone to Karen's lectures and her meetings, and I'm proud of her for what she's doing with her home on Moon Avenue in Brandon, and I've been trying to save to get a replica of the Gavin Jadon house that was demolished in 2003 at the corner of Lumsden and Parsons, where our 4th of July parade starts in Brandon each year. And with that, our 4th of July parade, I chaired it for the last 2 years, and I thank Music Showcase, who is on the program with you, for hosting our viewing area for the judging of the parade this year, and participating in her drum group actually won an award.
Yeah.
But Brandon is Old Town style, and we have lots of oak trees, and unfortunately with Tico and the storms last year, the oak trees were slaughtered with the new power lines going in, and they did not replace the oak trees. So I'm trying to save a historic house myself right now on Kings Avenue, called the Kings Avenue Bungalow. And I also am trying to get everybody geared up to try to do 250,000 trees in planting in honor of the 4th of July parade next year, because the heat is going to just keep getting hotter in Brandon.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so lots of things to preserve and kind of wrap your arms around in Brandon there. Leela, thank you so much for calling in. I want to come back to you for a moment, Heather. I mean, I'm just wondering, like, when you think about the kind of culture of Brandon, what is it to you? Because you've got a very specific slice of it, which is music, performing arts, theatre. Does it feel like it's got its own sort of personality?
I think Brandon in general has its own personality, yes. I have kids that were involved in sports, so I'm also a sports mom. And I think the thing about Brandon, actually, Karen and I were talking in the lobby, I think it's very much about community. And if you lean into it and you dial into it and you connect and you do the things such as the 4th of July parade, and they used to have a big thing out at the mall with Brandon fireworks and things like that. I think if you could get back to some of those roots, I think that the community, again, would meld together, because I think there is a good culture out there. I do think it expands a little bit into areas such as Valrico and Seffner and all of that. It's kind of like a Brandon Common. But I think Brandon has a lot to offer. I think that there are some talented people. I think there are some extremely knowledgeable people, and there's some great programming there. Whether it's through medicine, HCC has a campus there. I think there's just some really great things happening if people really just take a minute and dial in. I mean, I'm pleased with where we are, and I'm pleased with that area for sure.
If you have some thoughts about what makes Brandon a great place to live, or some thoughts about improvements, give us a call. We're at 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. I mean, thinking about growth, Karen, how would you say that's kind of changed what Brandon is and what it may be in the future?
Well, yeah, and you know, going back to what Brandon was like when I was growing up in the 1970s and 80s, it's much different than it was now. And I think that just has that's just the way the cookie crumbles right now. You know, the influx in population. I mean, look at Riverview. When I was growing up in high school, that was all cow pastures. And now it's like the 7th leading city in the nation for population growth. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Tampa, the city of Tampa, is re-beautifying their community. So a lot of the places where low-income housing was, or Section 8, they're demoing that and building skyrises, and then these individuals are coming out towards the Brandon area, Riverview, Valrico. So we're getting an influx of population, and then you have your home builders, like the young lady, what a great segue, and you know, the young lady before this, trending into Pasco, and all these beautiful pieces of property and land that are these cookie cutter style homes are being built, and the masses are moving here. So with all of that, it's really diminishing our history and our value, and just I love what you said. You know, the one of the biggest problems that we have here in Brandon is there's no solid platform for the community to come together, and that's kind of what the Preserving Brandon platform was.
Let me just get another call in here if I could. Vince, you're on the air.
Hey guys, so first of all, great segment. I could talk about Brandon probably all day long, and certainly to both of you, Preserving Brandon as well as Music Showcase. Both of you guys have, I wish I could have been a part of this over the last 35 years that I've lived here. My kids went to Music Showcase, and I'm really eager to see what Preserving Brandon can kind of do. You know, I think one of the attractions to this area is that it has a great opportunity to not fall into the mold of being just your typical urban sprawl. While we still got our fair share of, you know, the Olive Gardens and Targets, you still have an area that's very, very rich in, you know, small businesses and entrepreneurs and people opening their own small businesses in the area, whether it's restaurants and Music Showcase is typical. How do you kind of bring those two things together? You know, Preserving Brandon's doing a great thing. Right. How do you do even more to bring in small businesses and encourage, you know, the entrepreneurship that really creates anchors and residents in the area?
Vince, thank you so much. Heather, we don't have too much time left, but what about that, sort of encouraging those small businesses to set down roots, stay put?
I think the people that are there need to stay put and give it a minute. I think it'll come back around. I think for some of the small businesses, depending on what you are, briefly, you have to be careful of the big box stores. That is a problem. Also, for retail people, especially whatever they are, Amazon, things like that, that is always a challenge.
Yeah, a lot of competition out there.
Yeah, I think my challenge and shout out to Brandon is, you know, remember your roots and where you are, and you bring your kids here to grow and to live, and if it's good enough for your family, then support those businesses that are in your backyard. Be there for them because they're there for you. Yeah. And so if you support them, they'll support you, and there has to be that give and take for sure. I believe in it. And I think if the people just realize, yes, Amazon might be a day quicker, but there's no community there. There's nothing there. You're not going to have someone know you by your name and your face. And
stop by your
that's
local
important.
store and have a chat while
absolutely,
you're doing your purchasing.
Absolutely. Even for a few minutes, slow down.
Yeah.
Life goes fast. We were talking about that. Life goes fast. Everyone's in a hurry. Just slow down for 5 seconds, and I promise you won't regret it.
Well, this segment has also zipped by very fast. We're going to have to leave it there. But Heather Stump, owner of Music Showcase, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
And Karen McGinnis-Vaughan with Preserving Brandon. Karen, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Well, coming up, St. Petersburg boasts one of the coolest looking buildings in Tampa Bay. The Dali Museum's glass bubble is eye-catching from the outside and houses hundreds of stunning artworks. How did St. Pete get to be the home to the biggest collection of art by the legendary Spanish surrealist Salvador Dali outside of Spain? You're about to find out next on Florida Matters, live and local. Stay tuned.
I'm Rob Schmitz. Asking certain kinds of questions can lead to closer connections between parents and kids and even between strangers who might become friends.
The pretty awful small talk question is, what job do you do? Well, it's not so bad if you then follow up by asking someone, what's the best and the worst thing about that job? It's just digging a little bit deeper.
That's next time on Here and Now.
Coming up at 1 after Florida Matters Live and Local.
Dearly beloved, Sparky was a faithful sport utility vehicle with fuel efficiency and an uncanny ability to parallel park. Sparky saw soccer games, grocery runs, and the occasional spilled coffee. Now, Sparky serves the entire WUSF community because its owner called 866-WUSF-CAR and filled out the donation form at WUSF.org. Well played, Sparky's owner.
Theater Odyssey presents its one-act play festival with a performance of 5 short plays selected from 100 nationwide finalists at the Jane B. Cook Theater at FSU Center, October 18th through the 19th. Tickets at theaterodyssey.org. Listener support powers WUSF. Funding also comes from Caldwell Trust Company, an organization which has been navigating clients toward their financial goals since 1993, building wealth and preserving legacy, the way it's meant to be. Learn more at ctrust.com.
Welcome back to Florida Matters, live and local. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, down in the marina next to the airport in St. Petersburg sits one of the most eye-catching buildings in the Tampa Bay area. You've probably seen the big dome and the artwork painted on it. The glass bubble is known as the Enigma, and the building is home to about 2,400 original pieces by the artist Salvador Dali. The Dali Museum opened in St. Petersburg in 1982, and it's the biggest collection of Dali's work outside of Spain. Dali's friends, Raymond and Eleanor Morse, spent 40 years collecting his artwork. They chose St. Pete to be the collection's permanent home, but why here? Well, to tell us more is the museum's curator and senior interpreter, Peter Tush. Peter Tush, I should say. Peter, thank you so much for stopping by. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matthew.
Now, if you're a Dali fan, what do you like about his art? You can give us a call. We're at 813-755-6562. Dali never called St. Petersburg home, right? So tell us more about this connection. How did the Morses kind of come to be collectors, and why did they decide that this was the place to set up this museum?
Yeah, so they had collected for 3 decades. They knew the artist. They spent some of the highest prices on his work when it would come to market. They were definitely key patrons. You know, he cultivated, even vacationed with. By the 1960s, they loaned their entire collection to a show in 1965 to New York, Huntington Hartford's Gallery of Modern Art. And I think in that process, they realized that they had built a museum-worthy collection.
How did they meet him?
They simply were excited by him when they were starting to date. There was a traveling exhibition from the Museum of Modern Art. They saw it at the Cleveland Museum, and basically his enthusiasm led to her enthusiasm. So they got married. They bought their first painting over the phone from a Knoedler gallery, and that April 1943, they met the artist in New York City.
Huh. That's interesting. I mean, were they like, they just loved art? Did they have a lot of money to buy this in the first place, or did they sort of build it up over time?
Yeah, they definitely built it up over time. They were unusual. You know, he was from a Harvard Business School, and had a number of patents, I believe, by the time they were married. So he was a mechanic interested in injection molding, and plastics became part of the industry that he was part of. But they didn't have a lot of money when they started, but they made this purchase because they just shared this love, and they committed to it. And very quickly, they started buying more and more paintings.
And Dali, like a lot of artists, went through kind of different phases, right? So when they were getting interested in his art, what was he painting back then?
So it was 1943. He had already gone through and had left Surrealism. He was a refugee here in the United States, along with a number of other artists from Europe. And he was kind of fascinated by the Renaissance at that point. And so his work was starting to move from Surrealism towards actually kind of going back to earlier artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Raphael. And then eventually, by the end of that decade, he reinvents himself as a nuclear mystical painter.
Okay.
So, he's first interested in the irrational and Freud, and then he eventually becomes interested in the science behind the atomic bomb, and Heisenberg becomes his obsession.
Is there something about, like his paintings are quite distinctive, right? I think people, when they think of Dali, they probably think of, the melting clocks and things like that. Like, is that, does he have a signature?
Yeah, I would say that he is a painter of the irrational. He described his work as hand-painted dream photographs. So when we think of our dreams, he was the person who truly found a way with his technique to bring those alive and capture them on canvas in ways that are truly provocative.
Okay, so how did the Morses end up in St. Petersburg?
So it was just very strange. They had always intended to have a museum. They opened part of their office building to initially just show it to the public. That was in 1971. By the mid-1970s, 1976, there was the Tax Reform Act. And the result of that was that they had always intended to give the collection to their son. That was suddenly impossible because instead of taxes on the purchase price, it was the accrued value that taxes would have to be paid on. So the collection they realized that they would have to sell off a lot of the collection to keep what they loved. And they realized that the collection itself was the real treasure.
Yeah.
So they started to look for a home. And there was nobody at that time in the mid-'70s who really wanted to have the obligation to care for such a large collection of one artist. And long story short, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal about the difficulty. It was called Art World Dilly-Dallies Over Dollies. And
that's a headline.
It is a great headline. And ironically, it was a local attorney, James Martin, young man just starting out, and realized that that would be a lovely thing to have in St. Petersburg. And so he just mentioned it to a few people in the city, involved in the city at that time, and they thought it was a good idea too. So it was one of those just complete happenstance moments where they eventually were able to meet the Morses, flew the Morses down, and the Morses realized that it reminded them of Dali's homeland as far as the Mediterranean landscape. They liked the idea that it was a tourist destination, and so just one thing led to another, and we were very fortunate that that is the permanent home now.
Yeah. We're talking about Salvador Dali and the Dali Museum in St. Petersburg. If you're a fan, what do you like about his art? What do you like about the museum being right here in the heart of the Tampa Bay region? Give us a call, 813-755-6562. We're with Dali Museum's curator and senior interpreter, Peter Tush. 813-755-6562 is the number if you want to join this conversation. Peter, did the Dali Museum kind of help shape the culture of St. Petersburg? Because it does have this sort of artistic vibe to it. Was that what started it?
It was certainly part of it. The Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg, that's always been the anchor of the arts community. But when the Dali Museum came, there was a bit of a more international view to the community. And we were very fortunate to be able to grow as the city grew. So I think we were one of the key anchors to enable that to happen. But we're just now really blessed with so many museums in St. Petersburg, and there's such a thriving art culture. I like to think that we are definitely a part of that, and in some way partially responsible for just making the city such a vibrant place for culture.
The building itself, so when they established this art collection, what was it?
So originally, we were in a building that now is owned by the University of South Florida. We were in a building that was a museum a marine warehouse. So hurricanes became an issue around
Sure.
Andrew. So we were fortunate to be able to start a new project to create a new building. And we had Jan Weymouth became our architect with HOK. And it was just a perfect sort of merging of moment and idea. We have a very protective collection, really a bunker in the building, for the collection. And then this glass geodesic structure, which is a nod to Dali's own geodesic structure in Spain. It was the first company to come up with something that was a irregular geodesic structure. So it wasn't just a particular globe shape, but it was allowed to morph and ooze and look like it's melting like Dali's clocks.
Yeah. There is a trend for museums to want to have something like a building that's a statement, right? Like it's not just enough to have somewhere to house the art. It's got to be something that attracts people in.
Yeah, and definitely the museum has become a place where the collection is the heart of it, but I know many people who just come because they enjoy the atmosphere, they enjoy being there, they enjoy the cafe.
And hang out in the garden.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, that's the most important thing, to make it a place that's friendly and a community hub.
Yeah. Does that sort of reflect a little bit about what Dali was like? I mean, what do you know about him as a person? Was he an aloof artist? Was he sort of down to earth? Was he as strange as his paintings suggest?
Yeah, he was probably as strange as his paintings suggest. He was definitely on all the time. He knew the value of having a camera nearby and, immediately responding. But I think Dali always liked chaos. He liked circus. He liked things that were just over the top and irrational, kind of Fellini-esque. And so he cultivated that in his life, and it does trail over into the kind of environment that we provided for his paintings.
Yeah. Are there some challenges to housing a very significant collection of artworks in a place like Florida? I mean, you mentioned the hurricane threat when the original museum was there, but do you have to think about things like humidity and the risk of a flood or rising tide or things like that?
Yeah, so I think the beauty of the building that we're in right now is the collection's always on the third floor. Rising water is not the issue for the collection. Definitely hurricanes. We are built for beyond a Category 5, which is very reassuring. But I think that...
So that dome's pretty sturdy.
Yeah. Well, and the glass area is completely non-art facing. But there's always, the difficulty of trying to provide the right climate for artwork that has that kind of value. And it's what all museums in Florida suffer with. But I think we're really fortunate we're in a building that definitely was built to prepare for those questions.
Yeah. Let's get a call in here. Paul is on the line. Paul, what's on your mind?
Yes, sir. First of all, I'm a multi-year member of the museum, and I love going there, and I'm bringing out-of-town guests. I live in St. Pete. I have emailed the museum a couple times with some kooky ideas, and never even got a response that said you're nuts. But I'd like to lay them out for our curator. First of all, how about a Kafka centered exhibit? In the city of Prague, there's a lot of art that is inspired by Kafka, and Kafka's writings and Dali's art are fairly compatible. So that's one idea. The second one is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. The little symbols that designate where the restrooms are, they're very boring. You could make them Dali-esque and make it funny. And then thirdly, recall the Duchamp exhibit. And one of Duchamp's artworks was the upside-down urinal.
Right.
You could put in a replica of that in the men's room.
That sounds a bit risky, but some interesting ideas there, Paul. We're going to have to wrap this up, but what about that? I mean, do you kind of get some ideas from members and try and incorporate them into what you do?
Yeah, and I think the one challenge we have is it takes a long time to prepare exhibitions, and it's arduous. So I like the idea of Kafka very much, but I can say that a lot of the exhibitions that we've been able to do come over long relationships. Like we're about to open a Giacometti show, Giacometti and Dali in mid-November. That show's been about 5 years in the planning. So a lot of things take time. Yeah. I'm very open to an idea of a Kafka show. I think that could be super cool. But yeah, it's always just a bit of a challenge. Right now, we have another 2 weeks for our mural show, focusing on the Shine Mural Festival and their responses to our collection.
Yeah. Peter Tush, curator and senior interpreter for the Dali Museum, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Matthew.
Well, coming up tomorrow, polio was eradicated in the United States thanks to vaccines. Now doctors are worried about it returning and whether they'll have the tools to treat it. That's tomorrow on Florida Matters, live and local. That's our show for today. Florida Matters executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Our producer is Amelie Harris. Intern is Lily Belcher. Engineers are Jackson Harp and Gio Garvin. Warren Buckholtz handles the video. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Matthew Petty. Thanks for watching.
Poet Raymond Antrobus never expected to win one of the highest honors in the UK.
I suddenly got this letter, which I literally had to make sure it wasn't a joke. I was like, is someone pranking me?
Now the deaf artist is using his success to boost other deaf artists. Hear his latest music collaboration next time.